Hello, everyone. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, friends, foes, and everyone in between. We're back. Season 2.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hey,
Hello.
everyone. Good to be back. Hey, guys. How you doing?
I'm
Hello,
well.
hello. Hi. Who?
How are you?
I'm well
How are you?
too.
Are you
I
good?
am
I'm well.
also well. Are you
Collectively,
okay? Like, how about you two? Are you good? Are you okay?
wonderful.
you?
Yeah,
I am.
very well. Very good.
Good.
Very
Thank you.
good. Welcome,
Thank you.
everyone. Good to see you all back here. Back to the social pillar. Ongoing conversation about the value of role-playing crafts, communities, and cultures around the world. Look at our team here. I'm Ian from Roleplay Experience, and to my sides, we have
Sides.
Jared
Yes,
Did you
that
get the
way.
side
That's
right?
me. Hi, I'm
Yeah.
Jared. I'm the
in the
one in the
center.
middle. I get to do this one and say Ian's. Oh, I nailed it. Ian's on my right. Thea's on my left. Good. But not on stream. You're actually okay. Never mind. Hi,
We're
that's
going
me.
down a rabbit hole, people.
Season 2 off to a
Season
great
2.
start now.
Cracking. I'm Jared, also known as the GM Chef, the Game Master Chef. I want to, I brought this project about. We're back with season 2, and I couldn't be happier to do it with these two amazing people, Ian, of course, and Thea.
Hello. I am Thea, also known as OMGM. As always, it is a pleasure to be here, hanging out with two of the most beautiful humans I can imagine hanging out with, and talking about some fun stuff. So, what are we talking about, guys?
Great.
Look at that!
question.
Look at that!
That was
like,
good.
It's really
That
the
is,
reputees
is that a
back. Come
segue?
here.
yeah,
Is that what
Like
we
it
can,
is.
yeah.
we can do that?
That's a segue. Yeah,
We've
how good is
learned
that?
that
Yeah,
now.
yeah, we can do
We've
that.
leveled
Like,
up.
we went-
Season 2,
we
we've
went
leveled
to
up.
streaming school. Yeah, we learned stuff.
We're getting there.
Cool.
We're going to say, well, tonight, what are we talking about? We're going to have a bit of a chat. It's good to be back because we are season 2, and it's awesome to talk to you beautiful people out there too. Can't wait to hear what you have to say for tonight. We've got a very interesting one we thought to start season 2. The dangers of forever DMing and how to be self-aware and provide self-care to avoid burnout, which is where we're going to kick off from. It's actually more really actually about burnout and what it can be like playing this wonderful game of role-playing games or any kind of role-playing games that we do. So I guess the question then comes to what is burnout? And Thea, you had something here in particular. You had some research.
I did. So, burnout is a term that we kind of throw around a lot, and I have a thing about words. I like to be a little precise about meanings. And so I wanted to talk about what burnout, where the term kind of came from in a very short way. I don't know why I'm doing a sphere shape for this, but anyway, and just to kind of clarify what we might mean by it. So, kind of history, term was originally coined in the 1970s by a guy called Herbert Freudenberger. I apologize, that's probably not how I pronounce that person's name. But there was also an American researcher called Christina Maslach who was doing a lot of work. Essentially, they were working with people in caring professions. And what they noticed is that these people who obviously have gone into a job that they care about, they believe is valuable, is helping people, they'd get to a point where they felt very disengaged. They were not enjoying things. They felt that they weren't getting that sense of value out of it. And they didn't feel that they were being as productive or as helpful. And the term that they coined for this kind of suite of symptoms was burnout. Now, originally, it was really focused only on work. And the initial thought was it could only happen to people in caring professions. But as we start to learn more and more about it, it turns out that it can happen to anybody. And it can happen not just at work, it can happen at school. There is a way of measuring it, but it's around occupations, the Maslach burnout inventory. Do I like scales? Yes, I do. Yeah. So it's actually not a bad self-diagnosis kind of thing if you're wondering whether the way that you're feeling might be some kind of burnout. But this is an area that I can talk a lot about. And I don't want to go too far down that, so I rely on my wonderful compatriots if I do get too far into it. But what I do want to say is generally burnout's characterized as a state of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And people who experience it feel that things that they used to find energizing, things that they used to enjoy, aren't energizing anymore. They're exhausting. In some cases, they can be really scary and anxiety-provoking. Thing about burnout is that the feelings of burnout can cross over with a lot of mental and physical injuries and illnesses as well. So I guess The big thing is that you should probably always get things checked out. And I believe, and I think we should put
Yeah.
links now to some of the resources, and we'll put some links in as well. And on the
Yeah.
YouTube, we'll put some links down below. Is that if you're experiencing stuff that is affecting your quality of life, please get help. Please don't think that we're experts in this.
Yeah.
But burnout when it comes to gaming and to being a DM, I think is incredibly important and not something that I think a lot of people have talked about, which is kind of why we wanted to have a chat about it tonight. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of capture that. That's my little rant.
That was awesome. It's
Lovely.
I had no idea as well. I think that what was it you saying that there's a what format? There was a
Scale.
something scale. There was a
It's
scale.
called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. It comes in a
Burnout.
number of different forms. Yeah,
I'd
it
love
comes
to
in a
see
number of
that
different forms.
because
I
it's
will. Yeah.
if we've got something there, but we'll put in a link as well about there's 3 particular organisations that we are either connected to or very aware of. Beyond Blue is a fantastic organisation with resources to help support people who are going through challenging times for mental health and welfare. Black Dog Institute is also another one, which is fantastic. I haven't worked with them myself. However, I've had friends who have and have really helped them. And a group I'm actually quite close to is Headspace, who work with young people ages 12 to 26, very much about helping their mental health and welfare and confidence. So I really love that you talked about this in the sense of the general sort of idea of what burnout is. And I think our generation is starting to become more aware of how pervasive it can be. And when it's looking at something like role-playing games, I'm going to throw some things out there just as things that we've talked about in the lead up to this here for anyone in our chat who's there. When you've felt like you've had too much play in the game as a player and you're not getting as much out of it, those times where you feel like you've been GMing and you're just not enjoying it the way that you used to. Or even as simple as if you've been watching like many of the streams out there about watching games and, you have such enjoyment of it, or you usually do, and for some reason it's just not resonating with you anymore. Things like that, kind of like questioning why we play what we play. Why do we, when you have that moment where you're like, why am I doing this now when I'm not enjoying it like I used to? That's a key thing to start being aware. That's an effect that could be something to do with burnout.
Absolutely. And I think, why did we want to talk about this? Is it because we know everything?
Absolutely.
Well, this is a good
Or
point.
are we, Why?
Why do you want to talk about it, Thea? Because we're going to jump to
Yeah.
Jared and me in a second as well. So
Yeah.
why do you want to talk
Since
about it?
I'm jumping. Because I think it's a really important thing that sometimes when you're running games and you're setting up and you feel responsible for your players, I think sometimes we can minimize our well-being. And I know we've talked about this a couple of times in a number of other streams where you need to look after yourself, you need to give yourself space, you need to give yourself time. But I think particularly perhaps newer GMs and DMs, you feel this sense of obligation. So you may be less able to recognize if you are getting burnt out or less willing to take the space and try and do something about it. I've been there. I've certainly had that time where I think I talked about how with burnout you can have a sense of anxiety where you dread the game that you're running. That's not what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Do you feel that too, Jared?
Been there, done that. Yep, 100%. Unfortunately.
Because I know that.
Yeah, you have
How
to
about
push.
you, Ian? Why do you want to?
You have to push the boundaries sometimes, and then just kind of know where you're at, and like when have a plan to, have it. I don't want to say an escape plan because it shouldn't be that dramatic, but just know when to rein it in and look for the right signs. I guess.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's that point as well because I know that there's times where you've had stress because of a day. That's a different thing, and I think I know what you mean. There can be times, and I've had it too, where I've been GMing. I've been playing a game with a group of people for a while, and there has come a point for me where I just wasn't enjoying it, and I didn't know what it was, and I was trying to work out. I loved this thing, and it's like I'm not getting it, and it's like a taking stock moment kind of thing. I think comes up there. So we wanted to bring this up. We wanted to talk about this further, and we're going to come across to a story in a moment. Before we do, we thought we'd mention as well that, look, we're not experts. We're not like Thea has some very strong background in psychology. Mine is much more experience is much more literally experience from play and from the anecdotes that I've learned through my gaming. And I think it's similar maybe for Jared too. So, but we're here to talk about our experiences, and maybe this is something from what we talk about, maybe something that you connect with or you can recognize. And that's why we're suggesting these connections to Beyond Blue, Black Dog, or Headspace as examples if you feel you need to talk to people about it. And I highly recommend talking about it with your group. If you feel that you can talk about it with your group is a big deal. If you find that that might be a challenge, then that's actually possibly something as well to consider, and then find people you know that you can trust to talk about it with.
Yep.
So
just reach out to anyone who you can confidently say has your best interest at heart. You know, we can never say who that's going to be, whether that's, you know, starting with your GP who can refer you or doing some research online, but just be sensible about it. Don't rush into anything and do your research for your particular
actual research
for your particular situation. You might recognize moments or instances or empathize and feel for the stories that we might we're probably going to try and share, but it's not you know, everyone's path is different, and we all are going to possibly walk different stages at different times. So someone listening or watching this in a couple of years' time, I hope there are many people who watch this between now and whenever someone who needed to see this episode sees it, and we try and make a difference, because that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to show you that people have overcome these things. It's not impossible. That's what we're trying to demonstrate.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I think that's a good point as well for this to kind of segue into where we're going for this, for at least starting with a story. So we've had experiences of burnout. Let's have a look at one in particular that we're going to have a chat, and I want to thank you, Jared, for saying yes and to stepping into this to talk about your experience. And particularly, I think this is around part of the title of this here, Forever DMing. Do you want to tell us a bit about what that means as a segue into your story?
I mean,
Forever DMing. When was the last time you played, Jared?
Yeah, you see, let's say I actually can't remember, and we're not calling our little jaunt with the AI game a player experience. When I couldn't tell you what the last character I could play. You know what? I probably could. And it's actually really good. Now that, you see, unfortunately, that was the gag when we prepared for this episode. But I can now actually think it was with a bunch of guys who had been playing for a little while. And one of them was like a scout leader. So we played in the basement of a scout hall with like kayaks and tents and all sorts of stuff around us. It was very
feels
old
like
school.
a really bad American movie.
I know. It's almost like the satanic panic was real.
Yeah.
No. We touch on that. I've actually kind of got two stories. I got my personal one, and then something I've read in a novelized adaptation of a very true story, a very tragic, very true story, which I don't want to dwell on because it is quite unfortunate. But let's start with me.
Yeah,
I have been, so when I launched the Game Master Chef brand, it was to slide a brand over what I'd kind of been doing a little while, which was just networking and knowing lots and lots of people in the greater Sydney region. And I was getting offers to play for organized games for libraries, and this was offered as paid work. Even my local friendly game store that I absolutely love dearly, and I know the owner of very dearly, and I'm so grateful for that place coming. There was a random game that I picked up nearby. Someone who had worked for the right people in other places also knew this guy opening this store, and he was offering a paid gig to live stream a game on someone else's Twitch channel. So Ryan of Panda TV, I think he goes by Panda TV now, a World of Warcraft streamer. The first time I ever got paid. And that was to an audience of over 400 people on Twitch, for people
That's a big deal.
For people I'd
That's
never
huge.
met.
Yeah.
So I dove into it, and I had to decide what was my time worth. I had this gentleman who let's put it this way, is in a profession where he doesn't need to run a game store. He does it for the love of the hobby of tabletop board games, Magic the Gathering, all of these things. And I'm so grateful that someone who was in that position was able to provide this space, because it opened up the world of professional DMing to me. So this is where someone gets to go, right, you've made your hobby into a job, a blessing or a curse. Do you never work another day in your life? Or do you never get to enjoy a contrast between your work life and your hobby?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
cast your memory back to the recent pandemic. We didn't have the luxury, many of us, of traveling, getting into jobs. I am a chef by the most recent trade that I do. I've always been in hospitality. I've gone from events to cafes, barista and chefing, but none of those are really great when you're not doing social contact. So, of course, having the skills that I had as a DM and had run online games, just being able to, and really passionate about learning that, and very techie and being able to provide a solid experience, I was able to actually get clients from another contact all over Australia and overseas. So I had people, a whole group of people from Adelaide. I had some guys in Canberra, and I have I still have one of those clients. 2 of the players are in Paris, and 2 of the players are here in Sydney. So very interesting experience to be able to run these games for a living, because during the lockdown I was living on so some sort of upkeep from the government, as well as it wasn't quite enough, so I had to do something, and I just happened to be able to bring in a decent amount of money by doing this consistently. So I went from maybe running, I know that I ran about 3 personal games on and off. Maybe I was running one of my live stream games on Thursdays and another one, and my streak was 13 nights of Dungeons and Dragons in a row.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how
Good number
much
to choose
D&D
for a streak, but
that's the amount of D&D I was running. So morning to night, prep, run, prep, run. Of course, I had plenty of time during the day to do other things. So I was looking into other, I was constantly looking for little cafe jobs, any cafes that just needed someone. But of course, everyone was reducing staff. So this was my next best skill at the time, where I was just in an opportunity with the right circumstances. And again, I'll always say it, luck to me is preparedness meets opportunity. So someone say very lucky situation, and I did have to strike that balance. And then 2 years ago I started my new formal job, my full-time job, and that was very long hours. So I immediately knew I was going to have to reduce those. So I took my biggest prep, my longest running, my highest level games, and unfortunately had to, I put an end to them, and then I passed the baton to a dear friend of mine. So if you're watching, good sir, I hope you are still taking care of my wonderful players. And that would be the group who ran from the maternity ward. That's a story for another time that I don't think I've said on stream. But
I'm noting it down.
We're talking about someone who had the opportunity to immerse themselves in role-playing games, to run games all day, all night, and do this thing that they so dearly are passionate about, hence why you are listening to these words. So an amazing opportunity, and I just had to keep my mental health in check, particularly with lockdown, particularly with my reclusiveness already. I love playing video games. I love being online with people. And I am also a very social person, just in very limited amounts. So when you set in, you could just have a really big day. And I have messaged groups and said, guys, I am not in the right headspace for this. I cannot do this. Yeah. And that is because I believe, as we've kind of said with Sim, I've forged good groups. I've curated good people into what I believe is micro communities. We are people who check in with each other, and we are a tribe in our own little belonging, and what we have is special. I've even created my own little role play about the group that's recently started next to us in the game store. We have like high school drama beef, and I'm like, it's actually making me a better DM, because I feel like I have to outshine him. That's competing. The story I'm telling.
Yeah.
So that's what
you write the narrative.
There's the contrast, right? Now I'm back in a store, and I get to interact with the world in real time, and you can't ignore that is an incredible component of role playing games. Yes, we can facilitate them online and do a damn good job. But yeah, when that's all you do, please like check in with yourself. I just happen to be someone who meditates and is open with their feelings and willing to reach out and talk to people. We've all been in absolute dire situations, but yeah, there's opportunities to find another way.
Get help.
And I'll just we'll just kind of call it there. Like I don't want to. I feel like this is a very cruel thing to do, but I did put some links in the chat about Jasper's Game Day or Jasper's Game Week, Australia edition, which is happening yet again. It's to raise money for suicide awareness. Yeah. So you guys knew that I wanted to talk about this. Yeah, I don't think
please
we
do actually.
About it. And to take What are your thoughts on like having, you know, you have to have a space to reach out to, right?
I kind of actually wanted to ask you a question, and let me know if this is too personal and you don't want to share.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But we're talking about burnout. What sort of things did you notice in yourself that made you think maybe this is too much?
Sure. So I do have
if you don't mind.
No, of course. Absolutely. I would like to. I would absolutely love to. I do like to check in with myself and like reflect on my personality because I don't want to call it addictive because I feel like addictive puts a label and there's a whole sort of feeling about what addiction is. I like to say obsessive. So anyone who knows me will tell you I have so many hobbies. I have Rubik's cubes. I have, you know, drawing materials. I have digital this. I have roll you know, and I'll dive into something and obsess over it and figure it out. And then there's a point where I might either leave that to the side or it comes back. Right? I feel like a lot of people do this. So when I get into something, it gets compulsive. It gets so I like obsessive compulsive. And not as...
Would you say all-consuming?
Not as the specific... Yeah, all-consuming. Again, just descriptive words, not trying to label the disorder, because that is a whole particular real thing.
Yeah.
What I am saying is when it does consume you and you can't look past it or you are worrying about it, that's when that was the warning sign. It was, oh, man, okay, like that group needs to be thought about in this particular way. I need to approach this way. So it wasn't even... And like we've recently finished last season with, it's not about all the things that I had to juggle. I'm obviously capable, right? I don't want to say a master by any means because, again, I've said that.
You're very capable.
But I juggled maybe, I think about 7 campaigns at once. I don't know the exact number. But I also counted how many players I ran because I did a D&D survey.
Yeah.
And it actually asked you how much you ran and how long you looked at. And then I was like, yep, that's forever DM, right? When I was running for like 36 individual players across 7 games or whatever it would be. Yeah. Don't crunch the numbers.
And keeping track of that.
Don't crunch the numbers.
That is mentally exhausting.
Mentally exhausting. Yeah. But I could handle that. What was difficult was the mindset, the emotional difficulty, the curating of each experience and trying to reflect and tap in and empathize with so many people. As a social thing, as a okay, I'm an entertainer providing an experience curated to, for, and with a very captive audience. So
I think that
you
is
have that
really
responsibility
interesting point.
again and again and again and again and again. It's wonderful for 1 or 2 games. It's not wonderful when that stacks up and you don't have time for your emotions, feelings, and life.
I think that's a really important point that you put out there is that when you're running games and when you want to run good games and make genuine connections with your players, it's emotional energy. Like you are using your emotional battery because you genuinely care. And I think it's like a lot of entertainers. And I love the way you put that often as a DM, particularly as a paid DM, you are an entertainer, you know, whereas I wonder sometimes, and I think it's true, when you're running a game for friends, you're not an entertainer, but you are an entertainer. Yeah. Like you still have that emotional work to do.
I completely agree. No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you go.
I think I completely agree. You're on show, and when it's with friends, there's a catharsis to it because, you know, you can relax and kind of be yourself a little bit. But there's also the flip side. It's a double-edged sword because you also care about it more in some ways.
Yeah.
So that line, the blur between profession and personal gets harder. And I know that because I love my personal games, and particularly the main one I've been running for coming into 5 years now, and the love I have for it, I'm like, I have times I have to dedicate. I'm so glad you said, Jared,
Yep.
about regular checking in with yourself.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
as human beings we need to anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
vital.
I have my
daily.
practices, like I have a morning and a bedtime routine, so that I know that I get to start and end my day in a different, in a
Yep.
headspace, and then I'm prepared
Yeah.
for each day. And then meditation's my thing, and Headspace do their meditation app. I've never used it, but try something. Like I'll use different
Yeah.
meditations for different things
Yeah.
and stuff, and yeah,
Yeah.
and I can't remember where I picked it up, but I think the easiest thing is the world's shortest meditation, which is one full deep breath in and out.
Yeah.
It's that
Breathing
easy,
is huge.
and you just do
Yep.
more. Yeah, breathing is the biggest access to your nervous system. It's the quickest and most reliable way to your nervous system. So
Breathing is, and this is going into something that I do outside of this, but breathing is probably if you want to learn any skill for managing your focus, your mental health, your response, breathing, understanding how breath affects your brain.
Yeah.
But that is a different side, although, it
Now,
can be very
we could
useful
talk about,
in those moments.
I think that's a whole thing about what kind of techniques for focus, and
yeah,
we can talk about as DMs, because I wanted to then link into something else that you were saying. The link between personal and professional gaming, because there's this shift now that there are professional DMing is becoming an understood activity, career. It is with that. I started thinking about careers that already are seen. You talked about performers, and I know burnout can happen very much when it comes to anything in the creative arts, any field, in fact, when you have a love for the thing that you do. And with those professions, there's a lot more experience about what different kind of roles there are, how you engage them, and if it's like a short thing, you only need to put this much energy into it. Or if it's something that's big, you'll put that much energy into it, and you'll block out that time of life.
Yeah.
And something you said, Jared, I liked, where you said you make time for your life around that. And one thing that I'm starting to find as a professional DM, because I have a full-time job that's completely separate to this. And outside of this, I run games. Some of them are weekly, some of them are one-shots, and then there's personal games. And it's having that kind of finding the time and making the choice. I can't run another game at the moment because I will not have the emotional capacity for it. It's not the time. It's not about the time that you have.
You're in my brain.
Yeah.
It's the emotional capacity for it.
100%.
It's because you care.
Yeah.
Because you want to provide a good experience, because you're on show.
You want more people to play.
Yeah.
You just want, and that's why we do the conventions and that. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a Kool-Aid thing, isn't it? We all get very, just come and do D. Just try it just one time. Like, you'll love it. It'll be a fun game. Just try it one time.
Any opportunity.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing though as well, because I think it's when we talk about being a forever DM is why do we call ourselves forever DMs? And I know we didn't plan this and didn't
we haven't even defined it. We haven't defined it yet.
But the thing is, it's a common term amongst any sort of role-playing group. People talk about the forever DMs and the forever DMs. Why do you reckon we come up with that? Why do you think there are certain people who are the forever DMs?
I'll only answer from real briefly, because I think we each need to say from our experience what we think it is.
Yeah.
Forever DM for me is because we DM and we love the DMing role. We love to be able to run it. I love playing it, but I am now, I don't know if it's obsessive, but I am compelled. I am definitely compelled to write stories to try and get people to play them. I love doing that. And I feel with DMs and GMs who are out there, I love playing and I can do that. And also there's possibly, I think it's a personality thing too. I can only speak for myself. I'm actually, I would love to hear your stories. I'll talk about mine for a brief moment. I grew up as older brother to a sister who's like 18 months younger. We're almost like peas in a pod, so we get along really well, which my mum loves. but also have a lot of cousins, and we used to all meet a lot, and I was the eldest all the time. And for reasons or whatever reasons there were, it would come to me to kind of organize how are we going to play and what are we going to do and that kind of stuff. That kind of role has followed me throughout my life. So I'm always kind of like, how do we do this? How do you keep people engaged? Where are you off to next? Thinking ahead. It's like it's been part of, the whole. I've been built for DMing and GMing.
It's leadership.
Yeah,
it is a bit of leadership. I think it's
a bit of leadership. Yeah.
And that's me. That's
Yeah.
because of that. I think it's a personality thing. I can't help but want to bring people together to help some kind of guiding. And I think that's part of it, maybe. And I wonder what it's like for yourselves. What is it like for yourselves? Is that what do you identify with that, or is it different for you in what you see as Forever DM?
I'll go through to Jared because I have thoughts.
I definitely, absolutely resonate with the bringing people together. Like I just touched on, I've worked in hospitality for so long, from the event space to specifically chefing or cooking and all of that sort of stuff. So I've always brought people together. I've always been, I'm a Leo, so I'm a natural born leader. And I also, I think storytelling, and I think I don't want to say power trip. I feel like that's the wrong way to do it. Like, you have this authoritative kind of, it is power, I guess. Like, if you define it as like, that sickening eclectic feeling, that sort of, you have the hands of fate in a way, and you can curate and design and drive this beautiful thing that is a game that's indescribable unless you've played it, really. So that feeling that the Forever DMs will know. So I guess really for me it's
a rush. I completely
and like, again, it can also just be the emotional highs of play of being a DM. It's not necessarily about control or making your story come to life. It is just the unknown, the chaos, the interpreting, analyzing, and just whatever comes your way, because some people are utterly exhausted. Some people get headaches, but they still DM. And I don't know if they're Forever DM. But again, is it discussed in the group? There's lots of reasons what, how, about. We have said why or what. We've said what, but how does a Forever DM become
a Forever DM? It is really interesting. So just from your stories, and again, we're talking our experiences, I'm pulling out there's actually some commonalities. So you talk about being the eldest and having that responsibility to sort of run that. That's kind of like you had to look after and serve your family members, right? Hospitality, you're driving an experience, you're serving, you're looking after others. There is a degree of care and of service and care for others. And I think that's probably something that runs through a lot of Forever DMs, because, you're a kid, you're playing your first game of D&D. Everyone's like, I want to do this, I want to do this. Who's the person that says, yeah, okay, I'll be the DM? It's the mum friend, right? It's, that's it. And it's not a gendered term. It's just there's a mum friend. But it's because I think it's similar with me. And I think it's also that element of wanting to be able to control and curate the experience of other people. Because I like playing, but I don't know if I'm a good player, because I think...
No, that wasn't a comment on you. That was a comment on me. Sorry. I thought the same thing.
That was identification. I heard
exactly
it. I heard identification, personal identification.
Yeah, because I do enjoy playing, but I'm very particular about who I would want to play with. Like, Ian, I think my last game was you were DMing. And I think it was actually our level 20 game, which was amazing. And I trust you. Would I go to a game store with a random DM that I do nothing about? Maybe, but the way I played would be far more guarded. And this happens online as well. So when I run the one-shots, it's all there. There are people that DM, and it's usually people with DM experience that are asking, what does the party need? So I think that there is and that element of service, and that's kind of what I'm circling back around to. And the reason I'm circling back around to that is that that's one of the identified risk factors for people who are potentially more likely to experience burnout.
Okay. Service.
Right. Yeah.
I get that as well. That's like the nurses in the pandemic so many
Yeah.
burnt out because they were
Yeah.
overloaded, but they couldn't
Yeah.
help themselves because they
Because they
want
still
to they care for
cared.
people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they serve. That's their job.
Yep.
And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, completely.
So it's
Yeah.
and I know that kind of derailed from our plan for tonight, but I just
No,
No,
I can bring
it's
it back
worked
on.
beautifully.
I think
Yeah.
that's good. I
Hey.
can bring it back on because we're
Mm.
talking about, this is part of, we're going to talk a bit more about
Mm.
the obsessive nature that can sometimes come in down the track, because we've
Yep.
talked about that. We'd like to continue on. I want to continue on with discussions from week to week, but take it to a different
Yeah.
direction. And we've
Mm.
all sort of said this is a really great way to go. It worked last
Mm.
series, so we're going to try that.
Yeah.
But something about this is because of that, and because of that very nature, and we're talking from a GM's point of view, a games master who loves and is compelled to serve and to engage people and bring them out and put part of themselves in,
Mm.
then
Yeah.
if you don't check in with yourself, if you keep giving over to this from that sense of service, because you know, one, there can be a power trip to it. We know that.
It can be a rush as
But
well. Like it's not
it
completely
can be a rush.
altruistic. Let's
Yeah.
be honest. It's nice
The
to be
emotional
able to
high that
know the
is dungeon
secrets.
mastering.
I would say anything that people do because they love it is non-altruistic in some sense, because you get a rush out of what you do. But
Yeah.
the coming back to it again and again is because of, I think, actually more of that pure, we want to engage people, we want to have that service aspect, whatever it is there, but we're not checking with ourselves. We're not being aware of some of the little things that we're doing that is that the what's that word, the trade-offs. I can do another one here as well, and I'll fit it in because it's really good if they get involved, and it's the little moments where you give out and just go, okay, I can
It's
do
always
another
about
one, because
choices.
my concern actually is for the non-professional GMs out there who don't have those limits, because what's wonderful about running a one-shot where it's this amount of time, this here, blah, 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 that's all the time I've got. That's it.
Yeah.
We're done. That's it. And it's like, it's so good because it can make it easier to take care of yourself because you are checking in. Yeah.
And I'll actually be honest with you something here. One of the reasons I run one-shots is I don't have the emotional energy to invest in a campaign. I, have a job that uses a degree of emotional energy. So and I'm potentially not a fan of commitment either, but that's a whole other thing we can discuss later in the therapy and safe space.
I'm going to note that down as another option to talk about.
But that is because I am aware that I will end up dreading games, and I don't want to do that. When I talked about anxiety to start, that wasn't just from a textbook. I had that feeling running an ongoing campaign where you end up just feeling sick and obligated, and I don't want to do that. So I have, for me, one of the things I've put in place to maintain my safety and my energy is I run one-shots. Yes, they're a linked world, and that's great, so people can have that experience, but that is what I am able to sustain. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's very much something that I've experienced.
Yeah, that's good. How do you feel, Jared? Do you feel similar? Like because now that you're also a professional GM, how easy is it to run one-shots or limited campaigns as introductions, and what consideration you put into, because it's about the checking in when you've got an ongoing campaign.
Absolutely. So, I mean, even though I am running 2 games right now, I'm running a client game that's generally fortnightly. We know we aim for fortnightly. And then I have my regular weeknightly in-person game that I'm running for fun. Full disclaimer, the store offers the opportunity for players to contribute a small amount to store credit. So I do a $5 cover per player, and that just means that I have an opportunity to help the game store, and everybody buys snacks from the game store. And that way, because D&D is really not a hobby that brings in a lot of money for a game store. So that's all considered there. So technically still my hobby is still being paid for effectively.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there is that game. And then when you're coming into, I guess, like new games and stuff, you it's a mix up for you. Like it could also just be that world, that campaign, that, or I've also run games for the same group, different campaigns, and sometimes one campaign just didn't work. So you know, and having the wisdom again, like you said, in Ian, once you've run lots and lots of games and you've become a veteran, not necessarily a professional, there does get to a point where you have a certain standard for yourself as well, you know.
Yeah.
And you have a certain measure that you go by, so you don't necessarily want to try and push over a hump as well, because that hump could break, you know. It could turn into a bigger issue rather than just stressful or anxious to run a session. Don't let it become like you're going to other means to manage your emotions because you can't, because you want a distraction, you know. If as soon as you need to be distracted from the reality of any stressor in life, then you really need to actually do what we've been saying and reach out to people. So
I think that's a really important thing as well, because avoidance is a big part of sort of burnout as well. But I think, and just before I go on to talk a bit about that, because I want to, I also want to pick up on the idea of when you are running games for people, whether it be professional or you're at a game store, but you are presented as, here is a DM at a convention. If you do get burnout, you actually are worse at your job. There are studies that show your performance does go down. So your sense of self-doubt and fear, it's not completely unfounded. So, and I think if that is your living, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was going to just to add on to that. It's the same as if you work. You know what? This is like in hospitality, Jared. I can imagine. It's the same in any service industry. Work. If you do any kind of thing where you're working, and you get to that point of 1,000-yard stare, and it's like, okay, guys, we need you in tomorrow because we've got this coming up, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like, actually, you know what? Okay, I'll have my break, I'll have my sleep, and I'll come back in tomorrow, and then we'll be right back on again. You're absolutely right. There's studies out there very clearly saying, take a break, just literally take whatever it is and have a nap. And I think COVID, as with all of the awful things that happened, there was some silver linings to it, where people realized you don't need to be at work necessarily for every job 5 days a week. And it's like, let alone the discussion about the 4-day work week, which I think is vital to humanity, but that's another discussion. It's that ability to check out, not just to check in with yourself and then to go, I'm having a break, I'm going to sleep. I had earlier this year, I had a moment where it was so much going on, work, professional GMing, family, you name it. And it was one day I was at work and I just said, I can't, I've got to go. I've just got to go home and have a break. I've never had a mental health break day in my life. And it was the first time I went, I'm so glad I know it's a thing that I can do.
It's an option.
And I'm doing it. And I just said to the boss and to the team, I said, I'm going to have a half day. I've got to go. And they went, okay, are you okay? And I said, if I go, I'm going to be okay. Yeah, I will be. And thank you for checking in. And then when I came back, I said, guys, it's all I needed. And I've never needed one since then, because it was just that too much.
But
it was just that too much at that point.
Good that you were able to say that you needed it, because I think it is still a real hard thing for people to do.
That was the big
stigma to say I need help.
Knowing that you like
I need help.
Getting over that hurdle, saying I need help, and then just acknowledging it and owning it is half the battle. And then the time to digest, reflect, etc., whatever the brain needs to do, secondary. But half the battle's won.
And I think that's it. And it's interesting because it's going to vary across what you're doing, across your cultural kind of things. Like, you know, we tend to put everything in a kind of an Australian cultural frame, but there are places all over the world where those norms and expectations are very different, and they introduce a lot more barriers to people being able to look after themselves. Which I think, again, is a whole other thing.
And different expectations based on culture as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely.
So I think that does, and that is a very real barrier for some people. We're really lucky that I think that we live in a place and in a culture, and I think also are of an age and a level of confidence in our skills where we can do that. Going back to some of the new DMs coming through, I think it's hard when you're a new DM and, you know, maybe it's your first game to say, actually, guys, I don't want to run tonight. You know, I am not in a state to do this game. That's hard.
letting people down,
Yeah.
that service thing again,
Yeah.
feeling like I've let you down because I can't
Yep.
come up to the standard,
Yeah.
or doing the game and then it not going well, and you're like, you
Yeah.
feel even worse about yourself, so you put more pressure on
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, that's the vicious
Yeah.
circle coming into it. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties into what we're going to talk a little bit about and our plan. By the way, we have a plan, everybody.
All right.
Fantastic.
Kind of.
But it's a rough idea. But I wanted to talk a bit about some of the things that you can do if you are
Yeah.
experiencing some of these feelings of disengagement, of
Yeah.
just not enjoying things, of not connecting with people, because I think it is really important to have an idea of what you can do. We are not the experts, of course, and I know we've said it a few times tonight, but we're going to keep saying it, is these are our experiences and we are sharing them. One, because we love talking to each other, because these are beautiful humans, but also because, it's good to learn from other people's stories, but don't just do our thing. Get information.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but going back to that kind of what you can do. So obviously we've talked about taking a break and taking that space. And that's probably the first and the key thing, is whether it's you take a break from a game, whether you take a break from a campaign, that's okay. Nobody is going to explode because a game didn't run. People feeling a bit disappointed is not the end of the world. No. But that kind of ties into some of the other things we talked about. One of the key things that is really important, I think you mentioned it, Ian, is finding a supportive group. I think, Jared, you mentioned it. There's just too much awesomeness. You both blend into one kind of homogenous awesome ball.
Jared, Ian. I know.
It's all gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I think Ian was saying it's like connect with your group, talk to your group, but also find a supportive network. And this is something that is really important, not just when we're talking about GMing, but in burnout or some of the similar mental health or mental injury, because we can talk about this as a mental injury impact as well. And it's not just talk to your group or when your group perhaps is a inciting factor. Go online, go to game stores, reach out and try and find creatively. There's Facebook groups, there's Discord servers. Don't be afraid to find one that works for you. Because not every group is going to suit every person. But it is so important to have that peer group. And I think we've talked about that on this channel before, how important having this GM peer group is. Because one of the things of burnout is you doubt yourself and you get this sense of self-doubt and that you're a failure. Having other people to bounce those ideas off, because people are usually kinder to you than you are to yourself.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think that's probably a fair thing.
Oh,
yeah. I like what you said about having a peer group or having peers that you can talk to. I think it's interesting about having a group as well that you can talk to is one thing. It can sometimes be that it can be difficult, like you said, with the group that you're with. It actually might be an inciting factor. I've found that can be a case. Sometimes it actually isn't everyone. It could be one or two individuals that it's very difficult for you to talk to, or you find you're finding it very confronting, or it's maybe part of the catalyst for you. And as you're starting to find, I'm really not enjoying this, and what is this? I think there can be individuals in a group that you can talk to as well. And that might be a good way to look at it outside of the game, and just to find someone who's either in that group or at least related in some way, so that you can just share, hey, look, this is, how are you feeling at the moment? Is this coming across? It is nice as a GM to be able to say to people, how's it going? Are you guys enjoying this as well? How's it like this? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And most of the time you're like, okay, what about this moment? Oh, we love that. That was like completely, anyway, that's another story. But it can be someone in your group who could be someone to talk to. So have a think about people that you trust in your group, and that it may not be in your group. Then have a look at someone that you think you could trust outside to say, even if you say, I need help, like you said, I don't know why, I'm not enjoying it. Can you help me find a way to work out what's going on? Because you may not have the answers. I think that's an important thing as well. You may not have them, and it's okay to say, I don't have the answers, but I know I feel crap and I don't get it. And it's like, take a step back, have a rest.
Yeah.
Look at 100%.
Look at it. Yeah. And I think having that rest doesn't necessarily mean stop being creative. It's, you can express your creativity in a different way. You
Yeah.
might, we talk about writing stories. We tell stories through our games, but just write stories. Do something crazy. My crazy thing, and I've talked about this off stream, go join a rap battle. Go join poetry, slam poetry, something that taps into whether it's a performance need or it's the creativity need. Because creative people, I think, have to be creative, but it doesn't have to be in just the one area.
No.
So that is
And
a
that's
really
what I love.
important thing as
Yeah,
well.
that's the other thing that I love about role-playing games, and we've kind of touched on, we will probably talk on eventually, like how a Forever DM kind of comes around, but maybe not this episode. But you can also try and play. If you really, really want to stay connected with these people, if that's your opportunity to see old friends, family, whoever, these important people that we want to have in our lives, just say, hey, look, I need a break as a DM. Let's throw the baton. Let's pass it around. Let's run something else. Let's play something else. Let's play a board game. Let's do whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to do in my games, is if I'm not running a session or I don't have enough players, I say, right, what are we playing instead? It's not sessions cancelled, games cancelled, hangouts cancelled. It's this weekly thing that we do with these people, whether that is play a board game or play a role-playing game.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
hell, get an AI to run a game.
Yeah, try something else. Yeah, just try something else. Because it's important to stay in touch and connected to these people as well.
Isn't it great as well that the idea of a session zero has started to creep in as a standard kind of expectation, or it is becoming a cultural thing as part of a role-playing game, to go, hi guys, this is what we're going to play. What would you like to play? How does this work? What are our rules? How does it? This is great. And they're like starting to form it together before you jump into a game, because that's definitely not how I started when I was a kid. It was like just jump in and just play it and play it and play it until you go bananas. But that idea of a session zero, I did one at the beginning of the year with the group that I've got, and we're just coming back into it for this year after about 5-6 months. And it was so good to just check in. That's that check-in thing again, to go, how are we doing? Things looking good here. There were a couple of things that were like, things have changed a bit in the dynamic over the year that we didn't really notice in it, but now we're out and we've had some time, we've looked at it and gone, oh, how do we want to deal with that? We came up with new house rules, new ways of just going, hey, we're going to play a bit differently. We're going to try cutting back on this and trying a bit more of that. It was so good. So that's one thing. I think that's one check-in. And the other one I was going to suggest, I'm very excited. There was this, it's all from being in as a performer, from my theatre background, from performing arts background, and doing theatre productions. And I don't know if this is like this for you guys, when you've had a big project that you've just enjoyed and you've put your effort into it and you've probably not slept nights and whatever it is, and you get to the big thing and you've done it and you guys have celebrated. And then what I say to the theatre guys and my whole team, the week before we get to that point, I'll say, okay, remember, once we've finished, you're going to get the post-show blues and you're going to miss it. Have a break. Don't dive right into something. Go for a walk. Take a week off. Do things you would never do. Just absorb things and let go of what you've been doing, because you're going to feel bereft. You're going to feel like we're not going to see each other. You're going to need, and as opposed to diving right back into something and then trying to get that fix in a way. And that can lead to burnout, I think, if you don't have that chance to just step back. And
I think that's actually really important. And it kind of ties into something I wanted to talk about on a smaller scale. And it's what I call liminal spaces. So these are the in-between spaces between things where you are focusing your energy. And that might not be the correct term. Don't care. Our stream, our terminology. But it's, and this isn't just in gaming, but it's really important in gaming, is getting a conscious period of time where you switch modes or you switch mental states. People talk about it a lot when you come home from work.
Yeah, I call them transitions.
Yeah, transitions is that set that time, schedule it so that you can actually have that kind of come down from talking to a group and having this amazing experience, or it's been a crappy experience and you need to refocus. And then, okay, this is my in-between space. Now I'm doing X. Now I'm spending time with my dog. Now I'm eating a really good meal. Now this is all about me. But you get my, you get what I'm saying. Those
Yeah.
liminal spaces are super important, but it is really easy to get caught up in the space and caught up in the pace and just run and run and run from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, particularly if you've got kids, if you've got lots of responsibilities, if you've got caring responsibilities, if you've got several jobs. And I know some of my players have up to 3 jobs. Even
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the research shows even 5 minutes of that dedicated time can be really helpful to refocus it. There is, so, and that's, I can see you both nodding. That seems to be something that you kind of resonate with.
100%.
Completely. I just Googled it anyway, just for what liminal space is, but there was like just one definition, but it does talk about the spaces between things. It said a liminal space refers to a place or person being in a transitional period.
Yeah.
So it's not this or that, it's the in between. It's the going from one to another sort of thing. And they talk, it can be physical, like a doorway. It could be emotional, like a divorce, or moving house. Oh my God, it's exhausting.
Change of location. Yep.
And
change of environment.
Changing jobs.
Yeah. Change. People are not built to deal well with change, but that is a whole other lecture, which I will not
making a decision. And
Yeah.
going, I can no longer do this anymore. I need to let this go.
Breaking up with a group, all of these things.
Yeah. There's an interesting concept, which is, I wish I knew the term, but Thea, you know the terms. There's an interesting concept, and I can't remember what it is, but it's effectively like, let's say you worked 1 mile or 1 kilometer from where you live. You would walk that comfortably, not a problem. But let's say it was 2 kilometers. Because it's now such and such a distance, it's actually, you're not quite going to make it on time. So you'd have to walk a little bit faster, a little bit, you could make it, but man, you're leaving a little bit. But because it's just that little bit further, you drive. Or you cycle. And suddenly you don't have to leave as early because it takes you less time. So because it was further away, you're actually better off. You get to spend that extra 5 minutes with your kids before you race off to the office. You get to the office 5 minutes early instead of 5 minutes late or just on time. You're now 10 minutes early, etc. So a difficult situation, it's the frog in hot water theory as well. Like, I don't even know if this is true, but it's a classic thing that said a frog will sit in water as the temperature rises until it cooks. I don't believe that in this for a second. But it's a classic thing that people and just conscious entities
don't try that at home, kids.
No, please don't. You will sit in an environment until it is so uncomfortable that you do something about it. But the problem is our tolerance for what we define comfort and our bubble for what is discomfort and comfort can adapt and warp and stretch.
100%.
And what we emotionally invest in bloats bigger and we get more space. So it's just,
there's a whole lot of stuff, and and I think that we're touching on some really important points. We will acclimatize to discomfort a lot. It takes couple that with our fear of change, and I'm generalizing across all human beings, is that you can stay in situations which are unhealthy to you. Coming back to burnout, sometimes we can stay in situations where we should have taken a break, and there is no blame in that.
No,
I think this is a really important thing. If you find yourself having a response or getting into a state where maybe you do need to reach out and get further support, that's not a failure. That's not anything wrong with you. That is a thing that human beings do because we were built funny.
It's a powerful thing. It's not about blame, shame, fault, wrongdoing, bad, Matt. It's all about control, responsibility, empowerment, and self-awareness.
And I think it's controlling the controllables and accepting that not everything is controllable as well. But that is a whole actual, and I feel myself putting on my trainer hat here, a whole other area. But I do want to talk about one other thing in terms of, tips, tricks, life skills that are really important, because I know we are running out. In fact, we're running out of time, but that's okay. Our stream, our timeline.
We're almost there. Well, what is a tip and trick
the
as we wrap
last thing I wanted to talk about is pay attention to what you say to yourself. And this is a weird thing. We're really good as DMs, as role players, of telling a story, and we have that narrative. We've always got that narrative going on anyway, but sometimes you can get so caught up in the intensity of what you are doing that you don't pay attention to what you say to yourself, and taking that step back
Oh my God,
and
yes.
saying, how am I framing this situation? You know, I
Mm.
ran a session, it didn't go so good. Am I saying to
Mm.
myself, I'm a crap DM
No.
because I'm
Mm.
going to feel a certain way if I say that?
Yeah.
If I say to myself, okay, that's an unfair thing to say, because you probably will come up with that negative self-talk. We all do it. First
Yeah.
up, saying, actually, I'm not being fair to myself. I was really
Mm.
tired. My players were stroppy. You know, the dice just did badly.
Yeah. What
It's
was? Yeah.
Yep.
pay
You know, the room
attention
was
to
too hot.
your
The room was
own.
too cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was flooding. One of the married couple in my game had just had a fight. All these sort of things.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is pay attention to your internal narrative,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
that is something that you can influence a lot, and that will have a huge influence on how you feel.
Yep.
And that's both short term and long term. And I guess that's the kind of skill I wanted to wrap up. Because we are storytellers, is tell your own story kindly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Is
That's
the kind of point.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That I will. I
Thanks,
actually
guys.
live by that methodology. So yeah, that self narrative, that self talk, and how you. I mean, there's a line between being a negative nanny and being so delusional that you know there's
Well, yeah.
obviously there's a healthy
Oh my
way
God,
to do it.
toxic positivity. Let's go, guys. Yeah, there is a line.
Don't you know, indulge yourself and feed your
Yeah.
ego. I'll just mention a resource.
realistic.
I follow a
Yep.
gentleman called Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a doctor because he was a chiropractor, and he's into some pretty wild stuff. So I just want to put it out there that there is some research and some methodologies and stuff if you want to learn about these narratives, because it goes so far beyond
Yeah.
the mental reinforcement. You actually have an entire chemical response, and you get addicted to these mental states because of things that
Yeah.
happen when we're younger, and as we grow
Yeah.
we adapt, and then when we're triggered we don't even know that, but we bring up an emotional state and a chemical response in the body. So yeah, you know, if you weren't taught to adapt to, you know, social constructs and situations when pressure comes,
Yeah.
and maybe your parents yelled a lot as kids, you're actually going to slip into that emotional state. You are going to become emotionally that child when, you know, even if they're not doing it in front of you, you know that someone's having a bad time. So
Yeah,
I just love that.
there
I'll
is a
tap on
lot
that.
of resources out there.
Absolutely.
Not just Jared's sponsors. Let's come on, be honest.
I'm
You're
not-
sponsored by all these people.
I'm not sponsored by
But
Dr. Joe Dispenza. No,
Doctor,
but
there are a lot of resources out there and a lot of models and ways of looking at that, and they're not all going to fit the same person. So
No.
you know, Jared's got things that work for him. I've got things that work for me. We're going to recommend a bunch of things here, but
yeah, through
please,
trial and error.
find what works for you.
Mm.
And I guess the final point before I guess we can wrap up, because Ian has his wrap up now face on, which I appreciate because I am very bad at time management, is if you find, like, we're talking about burnout, but burnout can feel very similar to a lot of other mental illnesses and injuries, even physical illnesses, injuries. If your quality of life or the important relationships in your life are being negatively affected, please get help, get support, get information, and get it from someone reputable. Don't just go to Facebook with Dr. Crystal Himalayan Salt Lamp person. Try to find reputable sources.
Who? What?
Am I showing my bias against some things? But no, there's a lot of
Thea,
really
you don't need to look at-
scientifically backed out
You
there.
don't need to look at what I just mentioned. I would like you, for curiosity's sake, for your sake. It's
I
some
am
would say
curious, but no, but that's
I
the
would
thing,
say
like-
life changing, but yeah.
But that's the thing,
Yeah.
like there are things that some people might say is croc psychology, which actually work for
Okay.
people. And as long as it does no harm, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying that your person is,
Yeah.
but if it does no harm and it works, great.
Go for
But
it.
yeah, we're very much
like that.
about, getting supported if you need it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if you actually are having a serious mental illness or injury, you need to get help, and that's okay. There is nothing wrong. You wouldn't wander around with a broken, well, some people would. Generally, you shouldn't wander around with a broken leg.
Yeah. But you can get used to it. I think that's what
Yeah.
both you
and it can grow the wrong
both you and
way,
Jared have
and-
said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it grows and it heals the wrong
Yeah.
way. That's exactly the point. And that
Yeah.
whole idea of hurt people as well. You don't even realize sometimes that you can. But I really like that as a wrap up. Something that keeps coming back from today's topic is I need help. Just to be able to check in with yourself and realize sometimes that's actually the simplest thing you can say. And just to let go and to turn to someone you can trust and say, I need help. So, guys, I want to thank
Yeah.
you for this again this week. It's been,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we just kind of scratched the surface on this as well. So we're like, this has
Yeah.
been really cool, and it's good to see everyone back again. Like, we can't wait to get in touch with everyone else during the week.
Yeah.
It's time to wrap
Absolutely.
Social Pillar for this week, but join us next week. We have a new conversation, and it is kind of linked to this. Jared, would you like to reveal what that will be?
Oh, yeah. So we're talking about
Jared,
being
would you like to
self-aware.
reveal?
Well, I have.
Yeah.
I thought you'd never ask that. But no. Effectively, what we're dubbing the satanic panic paradigm, the other sort of an expansion to what we've spoken about this evening. Basically, when you do get obsessed, when it takes over your life, like what are some ways to sort of like rein things in, and just sort of manage your games and your dungeon mastering. So I guess like we can talk a lot more on these tools, these tips, and kind of shape some stuff in and just give you guys some advice and things that we've learned along the way. But there's lots of really good advice over at the YouTube channel that we have. There's videos like this that you might be watching there after the live, but if you haven't seen the live and you're listening to it after, you should check that out. Thursday night 6:30 on Twitch TV / The Social Pillar. All of that good stuff. But there's plenty of other social pillars. Wait, there's other social places that are the Social Pillar.
Yeah. You got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So please come talk to us at Discord, in Discord, Facebook, YouTube. We're all over the place. Yeah.
We are.
Yes.
Join the Discord.
Join the Discord.
Okay.
And for just so you guys know as well, Satanic Panic, we're not specifically talking about the 80s Satanic Panic that might come into it. It is very much.
Yeah, I didn't clarify that, but also the second little story about that adapted story that I read, I might touch on it because it was to show an extreme side of things. So we'll talk about it there.
Yes. Yes.
And that was
episode
1, season 2.
Yeah. So yes, join us. All right.
And
We're done.
guys, good to see you. I think we're done. Thanks for joining in again. Thank you guys. Again.